So that was. So when did you realise that you were a project manager? Was it before you were called one, or was it after?
Somewhere in between, I think. I think the points I remember were, I was being given bigger and bigger things to do, and I was beginning to recognise, I still didn't have the words to describe it. But then when I went on a training course, it kind of gelled for me. And in fact, I was talking to another person of sort of similar age to me and experience from the accidental project management world some time ago, and we were at a conference. And we were just talking about this, like, how do we even survive? Because nobody taught us anything. And I think we survived because, and I think the ones that did survive during that sort of era were the ones that had a kind of affinity to, a degree of control, but also I think more to do with the soft skills of understanding the people side of things and the communication that's required.
Hi, and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast for Sunday, the 13th of August 2023. This week we've got a rerun, as I'm on holiday, of Peter Taylor, the Lazy Project Manager. So enjoy. Just a quick shout out. Another way that I found that you could support the show, and there's some info in the show notes, is that it's the British Podcast Awards this year. For the voting cuts off on the 5th of September for what they call the People's Choice. I have no delusions that I will not win it, but being voted for and maybe getting on one on a list, I don't know whether they have a specialised list or anything like that, means that discoverability for the podcast would be improved, which is always the battle with getting the show out to people. So if you're inclined to vote for me, and actually you probably vote for others as well, I personally voted for the Social Distance Sports Bar podcast that I really enjoy, and if you go along to British Pods 2023 on my website, so nigelcreaser.com/BritishPods2023, and then that'll redirect you to the right page, and search for me, the Sunday Lunch Project Manager. It should pop up, click on that, and then cast your vote, and you verify it, things like that. And then you can vote for other ones as well if you want. So if you can do that, I'd be very grateful, and tell your friends. Cheers now. So I have a number of sponsors, affiliate links in the way that it's set up, that have kindly allowed me to share their services, really. The first one is Mike Lane, and Mike runs online PM courses, and it is a great resource for getting those fundamentals of project management trained, reasonably priced, and Mike presents it in an accessible and clear manner. You can check out some of his videos on his YouTube channel and kind of give you a view of where they are. But the code for that, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, all one word, lowercase, that'll redirect you to it. There's very different levels that you can buy. You can buy individual courses, you can buy pathways as well, if you like, and I get a kickback off those. Mike kindly shares me that, so if you do jump on and use it, I hope you find it really useful. I think he has money back guarantees and things like that as well, so there's very limited risk on that, so jump on that. And that again, it's nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, and enjoy.
I wanted to welcome you all to the Sunday Lunch Project podcast, and I've got a special guest today, a gentleman called Peter Taylor. I'm going to read a biog from his first book, and the book that I first got introduced to Peter, and I in fact have a signed copy in front of me. It says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Lazy Project Manager. Despite its title of the Lazy Project Manager, Peter is in fact a dynamic and commercially astute professional who's achieved notable success in project management, program management, and professional development of project managers. Latterly, the head of projects at a global supplier of performance management solutions. And in addition to that, there's a few quotes I've heard which are perhaps the most entertaining and inspiring speaker in project management today, with over 17 books and presenting over 330 presentations around the world in 25 countries to more than 40,000 people. So Peter, I want to welcome you to the podcast, and as I say, I'm very grateful for you to come along.
Oh no, I'm delighted. I'm a bit embarrassed by that first kind of introduction, on the grounds that was that was a PR thing I put together about 10 years ago. The dynamically commercially astute. Oh my goodness me! Yeah, these days I just say I'm a speaker and a project manager. It's a lot simpler.
Yeah, I dug out the book with the Be Lazy from Pete written on it, and I'd forgotten that I'd got it signed by you. In fact, so it's that long ago.
Yeah, wow.
So that, as you know, I've pinged you a few questions, and I kind of want to get behind who Peter is, really, and with some of the interviews on here, I want to try and get a little bit of a variation around people's history and how they got into project management, because I think it's an interesting and varied subject matter, really. So I've kind of given you a bunch of questions that I've sent there. Where were you born and where you live now? So kind of, do you want to give us a little background around those?
Sure. Okay. So I was born in the UK. I was born in Kent. I was born in Pembury, actually. I was born in Pembury Hospital. And that's interesting because my aunt still works in Pembury Hospital all these years later. And actually, my partner was born in the same hospital. Quite a few years between us, but that's the one thing we've discovered we have in common. So wow. I'm from Kent. I've spent very little part of my life living in Kent. I've spent most of my life living either where I am now, which is in Berkshire. So I live in Sandhurst in Berkshire. I lived here from my formative years up to my mid-20s, and I returned just over 2 years ago to the same area. In fact, I live just down the road from where my parents lived. But I spent nearly 25 years up in the Midlands. Well, you know, I'm just out sort of around the Coventry area. So that's kind of my personal journey. I mean, obviously, as you said, you know, I've travelled the world in speaking, etc. But I've only ever lived in the UK. So that's the kind of two major locations.
All right, cool. And you mentioned your partner there. A little bit about family and background there.
Yeah, so I'm with a lady called Juliet now, and so we have a family between us. I mean, we actually don't have any children together, but we do have a lot of children between us. So we in fact have nine children.
Jeez.
It makes Christmas and other events very, very interesting. So we have 9 children, ranging, 5 girls, 4 boys, ranging from 15 all the way up to 31. So yeah, quite a good range there.
So Christmas is a big project in itself, then.
Oh yeah. Well, I retire to the corner with a nice glass of wine and watch the chaos ensue. They're pretty much self-sufficient now. Actually, it's quite interesting. So they make a lot of noise, but they're a lot of fun as well.
Right, brilliant. So you said you grew up in the Berkshire area, and so one of the things that intrigues me is kind of what people who are project managers wanted to be when they grew up. And I know some project managers have yet to grow up, but what was it? What did you want to be?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm actually meeting people these days who grew growing up wanting to be project managers. It's, in my day, that was it didn't exist. I mean, it just wasn't spoken about. So, at school they told me I should be an accountant, which fortunately I wasn't. What did I want to grow up when I grew up? I guess the best thing I could say I wanted to be, was kind of my sort of fantasy, was to be a writer. Now, clearly I wasn't thinking about being a writer of business books, but I wanted to be an author of some form. So that was an overarching one. Beyond that, I was just generally confused about what life was going to offer. I mean, and my best friend is one of those people who had utter clarity. He wanted to become a construction engineer from the moment I met him, really, at a very early age. And, he's done that and he's been very successful. And in fact, heads up a major construction company in the US. So he always had a path and I had completely no path. And that's kind of how I just fell into project management, really.
Oh, wow. So going on to that with the project management, is kind of, I'm guessing you didn't go to university and have a project management degree and that sort of thing? Because I kind of know roughly you're a similar age to me, and I don't think those existed then.
No. So my education was fairly typical. I mean, I did my sort of O levels, and I then started doing some A levels, and I wasn't educationally minded at that point. I was far too much of a distracted rebel, I suppose. So I quit school and I went off and worked for a year to make some money, and then I went back to college and crammed my A levels in 1 year, because that's about as much time as I could bother to give to that kind of activity. And then
what was that first job then?
The first job was I spent a summer doing odd jobs. Basically, I joined a recruitment agency and did everything from packaging boxes to kicking parcels off trains and things like that. I would say my first real job was I joined a company because I shared a house with a few other guys, and they worked in this company. It was part of the aeronautical defense system suppliers, and they were recruiting like crazy, and I joined, and my first real job was a progress chaser. I sat there on a printed circuit board assembly section, and I had to basically make sure my job was supposed to know where all the work orders were at any given time. I wasn't very good at it, to be honest, so I was a bit too lazy in the wrong way at that point, and it didn't really inspire me. But that was my first job, and then eventually I fell into something I kind of got the hang of, which was stock control, stock management, warehouse management, and then it kind of moved on from there.
All right. So then your education, you went back and did some more studying, you said?
Well, I did some related to the work I was doing, and then it kind of what clicked for me was I joined a smaller company at that point, and they happened to be deploying an MRP, materials requirements planning solution, for those who might remember MRP before ERP, or MRP2, then ERP.
Yeah, I remember those.
And the IT director of that company had basically customized the hell out of this particular solution, and then moved on to start his own company. And they were trying to basically deploy the next generation of software in a kind of vanilla format, and they needed someone to do a comparison. And for whatever reason, I had some spare time. I showed some aptitude to do this. I had some structure and discipline, and around it, I produced some nice reports. And then from there, I kind of I spent time working with the consultants that came in with us, and I realised that those guys coming in would seem to drive much better cars than I had, and they seemed to have much better suits than I was wearing, and therefore I decided that was the job I should join. And if you like, I kind of fell into it at that point.
All right. So that was your step into a sort of a career path then, really?
Yeah, so that was my career path, but I was at that point I was a manufacturing consultant, but I joined a company, and I can look back and I can see it now. I mean, I can see that this was my first project, because I was doing some work for one of the home computer companies at the time, one of the many that kind of exploded onto the scene. Yeah. And they had this brilliant technique of sales and repairs, because they were literally, it was the heyday. They were number one in France, and I think they were number 3 in the UK, Oric Computers at the time. Right. And they were selling thousands a week, actually thousands and thousands of these things. But of course, a lot of a percentage of them came back because people said they didn't work, and that was quite possible. But the company had decided their policy on this was actually it was the users were idiots, and therefore we would record the serial number. We put them in a brand new box and sell them to someone else. And if that second person then sent them back, we'd say, actually, it's not the user, there is a problem. In which case, we put them in a big pile at the far end of this warehouse and send a brand new one out. And everybody was happy. But suddenly I realized that actually now we had 10,000 of these boxes in the corner. And actually that was a lot of money. So they said we need to repair them. So my first project, I would say, was to design a very simple test and repair line. It was such a simple project, really, because all the resources were in one place. I think I had to walk up the road to a shop to buy a couple of pieces of equipment, and that was it. But I mean, the people were there, the desk, everything we needed, etc., was there. It was just a matter of putting together this structure and process, which I did fairly quickly. And nobody called me a project manager. It wasn't decided it was a project, but I can look back and go, actually, that for me was my very first project. Very simple, but it kind of gave me some insight into the approaches that seemed to work for me. And it was many years. It was 5 years after that, I think I was called a project manager, and 8 years after that, I was ever sent on a training course to be a project manager.
So that was. So when did you realise that you were a project manager? Was it before you were called one, or was it after?
Somewhere in between, I think. I mean, I think the points I remember were, I was being given bigger and bigger things to do, and I was beginning to recognise, I still didn't have the words to describe it. But then when I went on a training course, it kind of gelled for me. And in fact, I was talking to another person of sort of similar age to me and experience from the accidental project management world some time ago, and we were at a conference. And we were just talking about this, like, how do we even survive? Because nobody taught us anything. And I think we survived because, and I think the ones that did survive during that sort of era were the ones that had a kind of affinity to, a degree of control, but also I think more to do with the soft skills of understanding the people side of things and the communication that's required. And then when I went on the course, it gave me all the kind of almost the mechanics of project management. And, oh wow, okay, I understand that. Oh, that would have been useful to understand, etc. So I would say somewhere in that kind of period, I kind of evolved into a project manager and took it from there.
Yeah. And did you sit there back there and think, right, oh, I am doing this project management training, I'm doing this is what I'm going to be doing for the foreseeable future? Or was it a case of this seems to be the right thing to do at this time?
I think the latter. It's the right thing to do at this time. I mean, one thing I'm terrible at is having the worst interview question for me, and it's a long time since I've really been interviewed, but the worst interview question for me is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I haven't got a clue. I've never had that kind of projection of my life. It's like, this is interesting, and who knows where it might take you. And really, writing the book was kind of like that. I had no idea. I thought I'd like to write a book. I'll write a book, and here we are.
Okay. So I won't ask that question, and I'll cross that off my list.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned one of the things, the fact that your first project you remembered being that unofficial project, if you like. You talk about it sounds like you had the MRP organization and the working with the desktop suppliers. What other industries have you worked across?
I've worked in most industries over the years. I mean, I haven't worked in construction. I wouldn't have a clue what to do in construction, and I haven't worked in sort of, space, design or anything like that. But pretty much every other basic industry, whether it be pharmaceutical, banking, or consulting services, or anything like that, I've that's one of the beauties of a consultative type world. You touch many points. I mean, my background is in manufacturing. It's a long time since I've actually dedicated to manufacturing, but that is my background. But I like touching many industries, etc., and they're all interesting. And everything I get involved in, I like to learn. When I published my the first book, I kind of annoyed the hell out of my publishers because all I wanted to do was learn about the publishing industry, and I turned up at shows and things like that just to understand it, and they were quite bewildered that anybody would actually want to do that. They weren't used to authors doing that, but that's me, and I like to learn it. I spend a lot of time in retail as well, and that's a fascinating world. That's where I am right now in retail.
Yeah.
And it's just fantastic. It's fascinating to learn the dynamics of that. Well, very dynamic business right now. I mean, retail is just changing rapidly, so that's what excites me.
Yeah, I remember all these different industries have their uniqueness, don't they? And I remember working with an organisation where I was doing a financial planning system, and they pointed out that they were part of the Dixons group, and it was a case of they had a change freeze on any of their IT systems from the middle of November until the end of January. And it's kind of like, well, why? And then it kind of the penny dropped is that's their biggest time when they get any money in at all. So they didn't want anything. If they couldn't take payments at a shop, they're massive impact on their business.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Golden quarter, we've just gone through that, etc. And that's the kind of things you learn about it. It's okay, that's fascinating. So I understand the pattern of the projects that we've got underway at the moment, and what works and what doesn't work, and when do you leave them alone, and when do you try and make differences for them.
Yeah. Wow. So talking about your projects then, and like maybe it's the ones you're on now, and although what is the largest and I'm not asking for stats and details to verify that it is the largest. What would you say was your largest or gnarliest project that you've managed, and what did you learn on it?
I pretty much learned everything that was really practical on this thing. So it was nearly 3 years in the end. It was in the steel stock holding industry. It was deployment of a kind of this company had many depots all over the place where people could go and order steel and all the other stuff that goes, all that kind of heavy metal kind of structure material. And this was the controlled rollout of an MRP system with financials and everything. It was complex. It was difficult. They were going through a transformation. So it actually was very challenging, and we got into also distribution requirements planning as well, and they had all the warehouses and restocking and ordering, and it was fascinating from that point of view. But it took a long time, and kind of what I learned from this was so many lessons that it went well, it went disastrously wrong, it kind of recovered, it was just it went almost legal at one point, and then it went to a wonderful finish, etc. So there was everything. And I think I think two things I learned on this one is, I would summarize this. One is the important. I mean, I'm not a person, I really hate people who just audit trail for the sake of it, but I kept good records, and actually, when we had the bad times, the ability to go back and reference clearly conversations, decisions, etc. So I really don't like, and people always joke about me, but I have no emails in my inbox or anything, and I don't store emails because it's in the moment for me, and it's a conversational thing, not a kind of an audit trail. But I do keep records in critical ones, so that proved very valuable to me, I think. And the second thing, which is was learning about the kind of dynamics of the users, because one of the big selling points on this solution we were putting in was that we would make life much faster for the people who used it, because the old system was staggeringly slow. Imagine some guys comes in, they've ordered some material, it's being loaded up on the lorry right now, and and they're standing there tapping their fingers and banging and etc. because they're waiting for the system to catch up with the order processing and payment. And this was brilliant. So when we deployed the first 10 or so of these depots, etc., service desks, etc., everybody was delighted. There was some teething problems, training problems, etc., but everybody was delighted because it was like lightning speed compared to the old system. What I didn't anticipate was that halfway through the deployment of about 40 of these locations, of course, the old system was no longer burdened by all these major depots because we rolled them out quickly. So the old system was going at lightning speed, and nobody understood why they had to change it all. So learning about the fact change impacts people in different ways, and you have to anticipate a lot, I think was kind of one of the other big messages or big lessons I learned from that experience, to anticipate the impact on people, and that actually projects, the longer they are, the more things change during the project.
Yeah, I can see how that can frustrate people, especially if they're moving on to a new one that it's subtly different, and the perception can be difficult on user experience, can it? So looking at I don't know whether it would drop within this project. What's your biggest screw up from a project point of view, and I hopefully you would have learned something from it.
Well, I mean, you've got the Lazy Project Manager. That is an entire book of screw ups, which and lessons I've learned, which is one of the things people tell me they like about the book. One, it's short. Two, it's funny, and three, it's actually got honest lessons in it. Whereas most project management books at that time were just theoretical masterpieces of perfection, which I don't think necessarily helps people. I mean, my biggest screw up, I mean, there's just so many, I think, that you can go through in that one. I mean, I think, the one I'm going to touch on it was from that project, the big project. It was realizing was it a screw up as such? I completely underestimated the influence of a particular stakeholder in this one, and I can't go into too much detail on it, but the point is, this particular person wanted a piece of functionality, and we kept saying that's not in the contract. I kept saying it's not in the contract, it's not in the scope. We talked about it, we didn't do it, etc. And they were so nice about it every single time, because this would happen every few months. They can't have a chat with me over a coffee or raise it at a steering meeting or whatever. And every time I'd rebuff it and go, do you remember this? I can't say their name obviously, but Mr. X, do you remember this? We talked about this. Oh yes, I remember that. I mean, right at the very end, and there was a major milestone that had to be signed off, and it was a tough old contract, because if they didn't sign this milestone off, they basically had the right to go back and try and reclaim all of the money that we'd already. I mean, those days, revenue recognition was very different. The moment the paperwork was signed, we think we actually basically set an invoice for about 80% of the revenue sort of thing. we can't do that now, obviously. But right at the very end, he basically just dug his heels in. And this guy was a very amiable, wonderful person. He was very influential because he was the nephew of the founder of the organization. He had gazillion shares, etc. And we had to do it in the end. We had to do it, and we had to do it at our own cost, etc. And it added another couple of months to the project, which on that scale of project maybe not so critical, but it was a screw up in the sense of I didn't truly anticipate or understand what this guy could do if he wanted to, and he was so nice about it. I almost apologized, but it's understand your stakeholders is critical, really is.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily need to be shouting and banging a desk to be not supportive, do they?
No, I mean, because in contrast, there was the son of the devil who was the IT director, who was always banging his fists and demanding stuff, and actually everybody, including the company members from the board, got bored with him in the end, and kind of ignored him. So they say it's the quiet ones.
That's a fair point. So, flipping it, let's move back to being a bit more positive on these. What would you say was your proudest project delivery?
Can I cheat and say, well, actually finishing my first book? So
yeah. I know, having now done a couple, I know what the project it is now.
Yes, yeah. I mean, because it was completely unknown for me, and it was like, well, I wanted to do a book. I wanted to write a book because I thought it would support my speaking, and that's really the advice I was given. So and I was very fortunate. I found a publisher who were willing to publish this crazy title book called The Lazy Project Manager. But I had it was interesting. They came back to me and they said, look, they were a very small publishing house. And they said, well, look, one of our books is, we're not going to go ahead with it. So there's like a 2-month window. So we could actually publish it this year. But can you write it? Can you get a manuscript in like 8 weeks? And of course, I said yes. In fact, I did it much faster than that because I had a lot. I mean, to be fair, I had a lot of thoughts behind it. I had the website I built, stuff I put together. So it wasn't that onerous. But it's like, okay, yes. And I didn't, I had no idea how to write a book, and I just, basically locked myself in my room. There was Post-it notes everywhere and bits of paper and cans of energy drinks and the like, and I shut myself away for just over a week to produce the first sort of draft of it, and then I was just in despair because it was 10,000 words short from what they wanted, and I'd run out of things to say, and and all that, and then but eventually it came out, and I was very fortunate. It was very successful as a result. So that was a project, and I actually did a kind of a retrospective on it afterwards, and kind of I could look at it and go, oh well, if you'd actually thought about this as a bit more of a project rather than just sitting there staring at a screen, then actually you might have structured this a bit better and done something different. So that's probably my proudest moment, is that it existed, and obviously since then, very proud on the success it's had.
Brilliant. So, kind of a link to that really is what made you start the writing and the blogging and the speaking? I think you alluded to there that you were looking to do speaking, and then you got the podcast and the array of things that you do nowadays.
Yes, I mean, it all came out from all that really. So I'd worked with a gentleman who I dedicated the book to, actually, and I'd worked with him in a number of companies, and we actually worked in a couple more companies after that. And it all kicked off with he basically said, well, I think it's time for me to move on. He would run professional services, globally or whatever, and he always recognized the need for someone to oversee the kind of project community. And this was before PMOs existed. We had a center of excellence and a community of practice, etc. He said, well, I think I'm moving on. What are you going to do next? I said, well, I kind of still have work to do here, and I kind of enjoy it, but I want to do a bit more speaking. I kind of enjoy that. And that's when he insulted me and said, you're really good at this, but you're the laziest person I've ever met. And that's kind of where the Lazy Project Manager came from. So I kind of then had what turned out to be a brand in the end. I didn't realize that. So it was like, well, okay, a book would help me speaking. Right. Okay. I'll write a book. And I was very lucky, and I got a publisher, and we produced a book. And actually it was, I was grateful in the end, because it was one of those publishing deals which was joint risk. So basically said, yeah, we'll publish your book, but we need you to buy X number of books, which was quite a big number at a rate. Yeah. And of course I said, yes, I would have said anything at that point, sell my children, whatever. It's fine. I'm going to be an author. It's fantastic. So when my 4 sample copies turned up, it was very excited. And when the lorry turned up with the shipment for my garage, it's like, it was like, okay, I need to get rid of these. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to hit the road. I'm going to start speaking. And obviously nobody paid me in those days. So I did, PMI events, I did APM events, stuff like that, British Computer Society events. And of course, I trolled along a load of books and sold them. And, within a fairly short period of time, I managed to get rid of all the books and actually ordered some more. So that was really good. But it kind of kickstarted me that, and it's something that's quite common these days, and I'm sure you know this. Publishers are really kind of good if you, but they also expect authors to do a promotion themselves, etc.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I tried everything, and the website was there, and I've much improved it over time. I started blogging, and that seemed to work. And obviously I did things, extracts from the book or articles based on the principles of the book. That was quite popular. I gave it a go at a podcast, and I was very excited when a few people started subscribing, and then astonished when I had my first 1,000 people kind of listening to the podcast, and it's gone on since there. And I would try many things. There's been the latest Project Manager e-learning course. I've tried selling the books online. I mean, anything and everything to kind of promote, market, etc., and get myself out there. And obviously over time, that first year of speaking for free in the UK turned into my first invitation to go abroad, and then it's a mixture. I do some kind of giving back to the community, if you like, and it keeps me in practice as well. And I like going to these events, and some obviously people pay me for the larger ones, etc. So that's kind of really how it came about, and it's astonishingly it'll be 10 years in May this year. I've been actually doing that.
Yeah, and I noted when I was looking at the book earlier, I noticed that it was the copyright on it was 2009, and it kind of seemed 2009 seems so long ago, but only yesterday as well. So it's really strange.
Yeah, I know. It's I know.
Maybe it's just age feeling like.
Yeah, I guess so. Like 10 years, and that's kind of, I go back to the early point. If someone said to me, "What are you going to be doing in 5 or 10 years?" I wouldn't say, "Well, I'll have written." Well, actually, I'm just in the process of writing my 19th and 20th book. Like I would never have envisioned that. I would have been happy with the book, if you like.
Yeah.
I just couldn't imagine that 10 years later that to a degree I would be known, to a degree I've been successful, and I have the opportunity to write and speak and travel 25 countries around the world. It's been amazing.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for that call for Iceland, though. If I
I'm
remember
still
listening to
absolutely. Thank you for that plug. I am desperate to go to Iceland. It got very close at one point. I met some very nice people with long surnames from Iceland.
Yeah.
So Iceland, if you're listening, I am desperate to come to Iceland and speak.
Yeah, I'm not sure my listenership is that wide at the moment. Maybe it will be one day. So just talking about books, talking about obviously you producing your books, but just what's the last project book that you read?
Well, I've just started actually. So one of the things what's nice is the fact that lots of people send me books these days to read, and I consciously took December and most of January off to go and read other books. So I've got a pile next to me right on my windowsill right now, and the top one is the one that a lady called Ruth Pierce sent me.
Yeah, I know. I've seen Ruth on.
Be a project motivator. Be a project motivator,
yeah.
Unlock the secrets of strength-based project management. So I've just literally started that one. So I don't have a view. I've just finished the chapter on an accidental project manager, so I recognise a lot of that. Yeah. So that's currently what I'm reading. So we'll see where that one goes, and then I'll move down. I've actually got 8 books to read, so I need to crack on with those ones.
Yeah, I was chatting over, I think it was over LinkedIn with Ruth, to see if I could get her on this podcast as well. So that would be really good.
Well, there you go. You can tell her you can tell her you know me, and if she wants a good review, to get on your podcast.
I'll try that, Brian. So again, similar sort of thing. Look, podcasts and blogs. What do you listen to? What do you read that you find that sort of like sparks your project management?
I'll be honest. I'll be honest. On podcasts, I haven't listened to many podcasts for a long time. I mean, Cornelius Fictioners one was an old favourite of mine. And the other few others I would dip in and out of, but I haven't listened to podcasts for a while, and that's probably partly down to the fact I'm not doing a huge amount of commuting these days, which I used to do. Blogs, yes, and I'm not a particular follower of blogs or writers, but what flies out at me if I see something on LinkedIn that's intriguing. I'm a classic sort of, right, okay, well, you got 30 seconds, and if it hooks me, I'll read more on it, and that's kind of where I go with it. Or if I've been talking to someone about a particular topic, or I have a conference coming up that's themed in a certain way, some things will leap out. So I'm a very heavy LinkedIn user, and and I enjoy there are some good blogs out there. So I don't have a particular affinity to anybody, but I like lots of people, and I'm more interested by the actual specific blog article itself.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, just you mentioned that you've got your 19th and your 20th book. In progress at the moment. I know I think it must be your 18th then. The presentation on presentations came out. Was it November time, October time?
Yeah, that one. Yes, that's because one of my favourite ones. Because I did a lot of presentations. You get asked lots of questions, and so I put together this crazy thing called the presentation on presentations, which is 60 minutes of how to be a good presenter and all the bad things you can do. And of course, there were some notes of it, and then it became a kind of a one-day workshop. And I thought, well, this is actually the basis of a book, so let's get that out of the way. And that's one of the beauties of the world these days in publishing. I've sort of digressed a little bit, but I have books that are published by the regular sort of publishers, but also you can self-publish so easy through Amazon. So there are some books I can just churn out there and go, I can tick that, I've done that, it'll be useful, I can sell a few of those, or people might be interested. So that's what that one is. And now currently I'm working on two books, and they're both with traditional publishers, and they're extremely different, and they're going to take a while to do, really, but I'm quite excited about both of them. They're both very different. One is to do with project management, and one isn't to do with project management, so that in itself makes it different and interesting.
Cool. So we get to see them later in the year or early next year?
I'd imagine next year. With the drafts will hit the publishers mid-year, so they typically take at least 6 months to actually put them through their little processing sausage machine, and it'll come out in 2020.
All right, cool, excellent. So I've got a couple of final questions on this. It's kind of
okay.
A mix, really. Is one of them is what would be your top tip to a seasoned PM that's out there these days? Aside from buy all your books, but you know what I mean?
Well, obviously they're seasoned. They've already read all my books. Clearly,
that's fair enough.
One of the things and it's interesting. So, obviously I run PMOs and have run PMOs for years. And one of the things I always differentiate senior project managers are not, to a degree it is about their experience, their capability to scale a project, the complexity of project that they've delivered and managed successfully. But the other thing I measure, and this is my challenge back to seasoned project managers, is share. Share your knowledge with other people. And yes, part of what I do is very commercial. Part of what I do is obviously for me and my family and income, etc. But I also do quite a bit of stuff to kind of try and give a little bit back to the community. And that's what I like to see in project managers. Every single project manager who's seasoned has a story to tell, and they may want to tell it in different ways. We all have their strengths and weaknesses in a way we want to communicate it. Yeah. But even if it's a very simple blog article, if it's a very even a LinkedIn one liner, or a tweet or anything like that, it is. There are so many opportunities to share, and there are so many people joining the profession, and it's great. And they are, we started off with honest. There are a lot of people who intend to be project managers and they're taking degrees, etc. But they actually need that kind of practical advice as well. So I think my top tip is if you've learned this much, you've learned something that's valuable to other people. So don't keep it to yourself. Share it with the green beans.
Brilliant. So exactly, sort of flip side of that then is the final question of you've got one presentation slide. And that one presentation slide, you're allowed to time travel to see young Peter when he's doing that first repair line project.
Yeah.
What would be on that slide you tell him about project management?
It's something I've talked about a lot. So it's very simple, and it's 2 words. And I was very fortunate. I was given these 2 words, this 2-word advice. The guy I worked for, I know back in his early days, he knew, as far as I know, he knew nothing about projects or project management. We were all consultants effectively.
Yeah.
But he came to me and he said, look, this is what you're doing. He said, Peter, there's a simple guide I have, which is no surprises. Yeah. You can screw up as much as you like within reason. He said, and if you come to me and tell me about it, we'll work together and try and find a way to resolve it. He says, but if something lands on my desk that you haven't told me about, and it's a problem, and it's something that you're responsible for, it's a surprise, then we'll be having a very different conversation. And I think that's really at the heart of project management. Project management is working with this crazy, dynamic, changing, complex, multi-person, multi-resource, multi-issue type world over a period of time. And actually, the project manager's job is to try and elevate themselves to a point of trying to anticipate as much as possible. I know everything is impossible, clearly.
Yeah.
But the more you can elevate, and then one of the biggest weaknesses I see in immature project managers is they get so dragged down into the weeds that they kind of forget I'm more for supporting your project team and getting involved and not being an aloof remote resource. But I see it so often they get dragged down into so much detail they never spend the time going, oh, hang on, let me just look at this. How's the project going? Are we heading in the right direction? Is there something, is this Project Titanic heading for an iceberg over there potentially? It's that kind of thing. So I think a slide that just says no surprises is extremely. It worked for me anyway, and I think it's extremely good advice.
Brilliant. Well, Peter, I've come to the end of my questions, but I could probably listen to you for much longer. If people want to hear more about you, get hold of your books, where's the best place they can get hold of or find out details?
Yeah, I'm in the website, www.thelazyprojectmanager.com is the best place to go to, and I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Twitter, and people just can connect to me that way. I love connecting to people on LinkedIn particularly, and I'm out there.
That's brilliant. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you very much again. I maybe not said it at the beginning, but a little bit of a fanboy from getting the book, and you're a bit of an inspiration to getting my backside into writing something as well. So thank you for that, sharing and inspiring, and catch up with you again.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and be lazy.
Yeah, cheers. Bye now.
Another great sponsor of the show comes in the form of AirManual. AirManual is it's a tool for documenting process, which and best practices. It's a company formed by one of my interviewees, Alexis Kingsbury. Essentially, and I kind of summarised why my view of where we see documentation, and my experience has been, people will document something, a process, they'll put it in a Visio diagram that gets loaded onto a SharePoint site or something similar, and then a bunch of that. So then once that diagram's been shared with senior management, they're happy they have a process in the business. But then the detailed procedures underneath it might be in Word documents, just poorly kept and not linked easily and not updated. And what AirManual does, it allows you to put in it's a tool for doing this kind of thing. You whack it in, the service in there, get in there, put in your process, your flow, and you build it down to as low a level of detail, even to the point of checklists where people can check off they've done it. So it creates that guided checklists, easy to create, easy to maintain, and all in one place. And no one's kind of rooting around to find the SharePoint, and then when you change to new SharePoint services and all that stuff, it's all there. So if you pop along to nigelpriester.com/airmanual, there's a bit more detail there and a link there to click on to go and get. I think they offer a trial and things like that. So it's something that I think can easily reduce the amount of errors, rework, etc. within our organisations. So take a look. Well, I hope you enjoyed the interview with Peter there. For those who've listened to it before, I hope you picked out some new things. For those who haven't, maybe you want to jump back, listen to some of the back catalogue, although we've got a couple of back catalogue items coming up over the next couple of weeks if you're not convinced. So look after yourself. Cheers now. So this is my final wrap up. Every week you're going to hear this, you're going to get bored of it, but you can always click next podcast if so. if you have enjoyed it, if you listen to this podcast to the end of this show and you think that was great, I'd love to be able to help Nigel out. There are loads of ways you can do it. The first and obvious way is to share the podcast, send it out to people. If you know colleagues and friends who'd benefit from it, you think they'd enjoy it, just send them the link. Grab one of the links, or send them to www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts. That's www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts, and that will push them over to a Linktree link, and it's got all of the different ways they can consume the podcast. If you are feeling generous and have a big bag of cash, you could grab a copy of one of my books. Obviously, they're available in all the usual places, in print and digital. Again, jump on the website, www.nigelcreaser.com/shop, and that will give you a list of all the different ways that you can contribute and grab copies of the book. Also got links to all my guests' books on there as well, where I get a little bit of a kickback from them. If you are of a sporting mind, I have a number through doing some of my judo and running antics. I've managed to secure a few affiliate links and affiliates there as well. So in there, somewhere in the sponsors page, there's links to those as well. So clicking onto those and grabbing if you're looking to get super fit, then that would be fabulous as well, and I get a little kickback from those. I have a Patreon account. It's patreon.com/sundaylunchpm. So again, you can ping something in there, buy me a coffee or whatever. And finally, obviously the most important is coming back, listen again, because the more of you that come back, the more visibility I get, because there's more times that it's downloaded and all the SEO works and things like that. So yeah, that's it. So if you can help me out, I would be much appreciated. If you can't, don't worry about it. Thank you very much. Cheers now. Bye. My latest, the latest affiliate that I've got on the show now is Riverside. I use Riverside to do my interviews, Riverside FM. It kind of offers you a whole, if you like, micro studio management producer tooling and goes beyond that. Has a really good free layer. And I've been using it for a while now. I find it really good. When I've had issues, even though I'm not on one of the higher paid levels, the support has been quick, responsive and of high quality, and people keen to help me. The organisation seems really good. The product seems really intuitive, and quality is really good as well. And it's a clever way of doing it is when you're recording through your browsers, so you've not got loads of desktop resources being used compared to some other products that I've used. And what they also do is they stream a lower quality version of it up onto as you're doing the interview, so you're not burning bandwidth while you're doing the interview and potentially impacting on the quality of the conversation. And then at the end, it uploads it, the higher quality from your browser. It's just a really good way of doing it. So if you are thinking of doing a podcast, and know someone who's doing a podcast, I would recommend using this tool. I found it really good. Best of the tools that I've tried using to date. And you can get that at nigelcreaser.com/riverside, and that will redirect you to my kickback page on their site, and there I will get a little kickback from them. So take a look. Thanks.
Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.